Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Bill. Behind me, mid-engine SLC chassis, 67 Mustang Fastback body. We are in the process of getting the body onto the chassis. In today's episode, we're gonna get it all mocked up, make sure we can make it fit, and then hopefully we'll get started on the roll cage. Stay tuned. All right, jumping into the passenger side, there's a little bit more stuff that looks like it's probably gonna be in the way. This brand new panel we just unboxed from Nick's garage, so we gotta go ahead and take this stuff off. Luckily, it just unscrews, so that'll be real easy. We're gonna go ahead and mark a center line over the wheel so we know exactly what the center of the wheel is. Unscrew that, that'll get our panel placement horizontally on here. And then width-wise, we're thinking that this may have to go and this may have to move as well. So we'll go ahead and get those out of the way so we can get the panel mock fitted on there. Got the panel mock fitted on here, and we got our center line marked by over there, so that's exactly where it needs to go in relation to the chassis horizontally, this way and that way. It's tilt in and out. We have no idea until we set the roof panel. This stuff is definitely going to be in the way though. We have the coolant reservoir is going to need to move inward, and our fuel filler neck, and unfortunately, big unfortunate, is it looks like that fuse box down there is probably going to be in the way too. So we're going to move what we have to move to be able to snug this thing right up to the chassis. Got to basically close in this gap right here. Uh-oh, starting to look like a car, a little bit. Okay, so, yeah, I'm not even gonna address the fact that this is in our door. We'll figure that out later. This though is shaping up to look really cool and really good. Now this is set at the width that the SLC chassis was. Based on my measurements, it should be a 1/2 inch wide on the bottom, which makes it a 1/4 inch wide on each side. That may be no big deal. To figure out if it is or not, we need to start placing body panels on here, the supports that go across the roof, the roof panel, the front cowl, the other roof structure support. These types of things will help tell us if our width is acceptable to squeeze out that extra 1/4 inch, or if no, we gotta trim this panel down a little bit more. So we're gonna go ahead and get that in, and we're probably gonna use Cleco pins to temporarily pin things together. If they start popping out, we're just gonna grab the welder and just do a couple tacks, and then we'll plan on undoing those tacks a little bit later on. Mission accomplished. We got this thing, we got the whole side panel slid forward about 1.5 inches, gains us 1.5 inches more cabin entry space by centering it dead center from that point to that point, centering it over the rear hub. So that's centered over the rear wheel now. We are back to figuring out the width of the vehicle and setting the width correctly. Well guys, we ran into what I would consider a mildly concerning problem of measurement. It's not that big of a deal actually. It's just I wasn't expecting this. I pre-measured pretty much all of this stuff out on the computers before we did that. If this is off as bad as I think it is, see how that cowl isn't like matching up with that? If that's off as bad as I think it might be, it probably means that the base 3D model that I was using to measure this entire car and this entire project was wrong. So it might mean that we have to cut a few extra things. Hopefully it doesn't mean any extra compromises. But let me show you what we're looking at and how we're gonna try and figure this out. This piece right up here is a cowl, and it sure does look like this hole is supposed to line up with this hole. But you can see how far off it is width-wise, and the other side is like the same, which means that the front front upper part of our vehicle is off by like 5 inches or something, which is a whole lot more than I ever thought on the 3D program that it would be off by. So what we're gonna go do is just watch a YouTube video. I'm gonna hope I can find some video of somebody replacing one of these cowls and see if I can see where it lands over here and verify that this goes here. If it does, then we know we gotta start playing the shrinky game. If we had our windshield glass here, that would tell us a lot, but it's in the mail. It should be here like tomorrow, next day. Let's go watch some YouTube and learn something. Here in the Beast for Build Research Laboratory, Fix-It Nick, really nice guy actually, has got nearly 1 million views replacing one of these cowls, and we saw we saw what we did want to see because he made a great video, but we saw what we didn't want to see, which is that our car's not lining up at all. So measurementally, we're back to square one. We got to figure some stuff out. All right, guys, I'm not sure if it's the next day or the day after the next day, but safe to say we've lost some time, but we've done some very, very important research, and it all turns out to not be good. So basically, here's what happened. On my computer, I have this thing right here. This was a very expensive 3D model of a 67 Mustang Fastback that I purchased. I did some referencing on it to make sure that things were the right size and everything in the real world, everything that I could reference, and I thought that this model was to scale. At that point, I started playing around with it in a 3D scan of what this thing looked like when we got it. And that's how I came to the conclusion that the 67 Mustang body was going to fit over the SLC chassis. Turns out that my 3D model was actually not a correct reference to the real life measurements of the 67 Mustang body, and it was off by not a small amount, by 5 inches, which is a lot, obviously. And that eventually led us to the problem that we found out when we were trying to test fit the body. So I then called some friends that have Mustang, like TJ Hunt, and he told me that he'd give me some measurements and that he never did. So then I called better friends. I'm just kidding, TJ, I love you. Anyways, Nick from Nick's Garage, the guy that's the dealer for all of these parts that we bought through him, has one of these up on a jig, and he was able to give me exact measurements for this pinch weld right here, this rocker pinch weld at the A pillar, at the B pillar, at different points. You can see we've actually written them down on the car. So from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, and here to here. We know all of these measurements, and the car is not designed to be square. This pinch weld widens out as it gets to the back a little bit. Our SLC chassis is completely square, but that's not really a problem. We can obviously widen it out, but the problem is that this frame rail right up here is 5.5 inches wider than the Mustang wants to be. So that put us in a pretty serious decision mode. There was a couple ways that we could do this. We could start cutting at the Mustang body and shrinking it in. The downer side there would be chopping into the door a lot, and the Mustang door would be really weird, and eventually if we chopped enough of it off, the window wouldn't be able to go up and down, because that's why doors are thick, is because there's a window and a window motor going up and down inside there. And the other negatives is we'd probably have a body where we were kind of stretching it over the chassis. So we decided we didn't want to do that, and we decided that yes, we are on a tight deadline to try and make LS Fest, but it'd be better to build the car properly, build it the right way. We're already building it weirdly by making it mid-engine. If we're gonna do this project, we gotta do it right, and that means shortening up the SLC chassis. So then we went into, kind of engineering mode. Is that possible? Absolutely, it's totally possible to do. We don't really have to change that much stuff. It's just a lot of heavy lifting. It's a lot of heavy work. We basically, I'll show you. So we took the side panel off so you could see. So basically, if you treat this as one big piece coming all through here and up here, treat this as one big piece as well. We're just gonna have to cut it, keep it all structurally intact, cut it there, running back through there, cut it there, and then make another cut to make room for it to scoot in 2.5 inches, and then boom, we move it in 2.5 inches on each side. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna skinny it up. I know you guys are gonna think, A, we're crazy, and B, this is probably, I don't know. Just know that this chassis is a really amazing chassis. It's a good thing. It's a really cool piece of engineering. I really want Mustang Fastback like so bad. I did not want to let this, what I would consider a mid-sized problem, stop this build in the tracks and then try and find another chassis for the Fastback Mustang. I just don't want to do that. I'm really hyped on this idea. I want the mid-engine Mustang. I want it to be a thing that I own. So we're going to go forward with it. And this won't affect the chassis itself in any negative way, I promise. We're just making it a little bit skinnier, and areas that are not connected to control arms, are not connected to the chassis geometry, the steering geometry, the suspension, nothing, none of this. It's basically just an arbitrary width that they built it to. And if you called them up and said, hey, I needed you to build one that's a little bit skinnier, they wouldn't have a problem doing it. So we're just doing it now after the fact. It's not that big of a deal. So that was a lot of talking. Now it's time to get down to work. We're gonna go ahead and remove the fuel cell for safety, because there's gonna be a lot of cutting and a lot of sparks. And then, yeah, we'll get to cutting and making sparks. You did do a lot of welding. All right, guys, the hits just keep coming. So Oscar removed the fuel cell. The fuel is oddly yellow, but that's not the issue that we're worried about. I had noticed that there was a buildup of crud and grime kind of in this corner, back through here and over here, and we couldn't really be sure what it was. Then Oscar got the fuel cell out here and noticed it's leaking from this back corner right here, and then we saw the damage to the fuel cell right here. So the fuel cell is damaged. That's not the type of thing that you try and repair. This thing is just straight up garbage now. We'll salvage some parts off of it, like the lines and then this fitting right here, because we know this is a good fitting for our filler neck. But what this means is we got to get another fuel cell ASAP, like real fast. But this is kind of good, because this fuel cell was for the width of the original build of the car, the 60-inch width. Now that we got to go down to 54.5, you know, it's actually going to give us the opportunity to maybe cut down to a little bit smaller fuel cell that we won't have to scrunch up. Actually, too, it's going to give us a lot more room back here that we could potentially install things back here if we needed to as well. Or for our seat to recline. Actually, there's a lot of positives here, Oscar. Okay, Oscar, so I will be in charge of ordering a new fuel cell. So while Oscar's doing this, I'm over here wiring the burnt con. We decided to rewire and new ECU the entire car. That will be in an episode that we're gonna film at LS Fest, showing you guys all the upgrades that we did, and then obviously driving. We're hoping to drag race that baby and get kicked off the track with it. Anywho, I will get a new fuel cell ordered that will fit in there, and we'll work with all our lines and the fuel center unit that I just bought and all that good stuff. I think we'll leave this overnight to fume out. Yep. And first thing tomorrow, are we ready to start cutting?
I think so. I think remove the cage and then start cutting.
Oh yeah, we'll unbolt this and then start cutting. Rear main bar and rear supports that went into this pickup point right here are off of the car. Not to say that they won't come back on. We may remake it, or we may utilize that part. We're not really sure. Next, we got to take off this dash bar, because width-wise, it is getting in our way. So we're gonna unbolt it from right here, and then unbolt it from the car over here, and then take that off and see if we're good to start cutting. This thing looks naked now. There we go, we got the dash bar out. It's like any good project. Got to tear it all the way down before you build it back up. That's how they did the Mona Lisa. Draw lines once, cut twice. Let's do this. Tell which side's the skinny side? All right, so Oscar cut the car long ways twice, took out our gap, took out our extra width that we had, got the side panel all straightened back up, sanded down. We welded in a fish plate right here to help reinforce the work that we did with the extension previously. That's something we're going to do on the other side as well. You got a new gusset right here, also making it stronger, and then it is tacked back in. So now this is Mustang width tacked back in. You can see what we're going to be doing with the rear section here, how these things are going to get refit once we're ready, and they're going to go in like that. Bottom one's going to come in too. And we should be good. In theory, this should be no different than the way that they built it from factory. It's just all welded aluminum pieces. And this is a lot of work to make it right, but hey, what's the point of building it if we're not gonna build it right? So every time I post videos like this where stuff goes completely sideways, the audience is usually pretty torn. Half the people just wanna say negative stuff, oh, you shouldn't have done this is a bad idea, etc. And the other half of the people say, thanks for showing and being honest what happens when things go wrong. Because, you know, at home on other people's projects, things often go wrong too. And we like to show the reality of like how we problem solve, how we get through these problems. And if for nothing else, just show that, you know, mistakes happen to everybody. We are not professional car builders. This isn't for some client. We are just guys having fun, and you know, sometimes things go sideways, but luckily this is a type of thing that went sideways, but it's fixable. So next time I'll be much more careful with my 3D models before I virtually build a car, make sure my measurements are more intact. But this is, I would say, a medium-sized problem, because like I always talk about, sometimes when you have to fix a large problem, there are compromises that have to be made. Other than the elbow grease that goes into doing this, we don't have to have any other compromises. It's actually going to make the whole thing better in every single way. So I'd say medium-sized problem that takes a lot of legwork and a lot of work to fix, but that's what we do. We build things. So from this point, we have 2 weeks until LS Fest. I'm really, really hoping to bring this thing to LS Fest and drive it there. I wouldn't expect it to be painted at this point. Thank you guys so much for joining. In the next episode, we will get the body mock fitted onto this car, and it'll be the right width and all the right dimensions. Once you cut the car in half 5 times, 2 on each side and 1 right through the middle, it'll fit a Mustang. See you guys on the next one. Peace!